2025 will finally be the year that you master guitar because you're going to start incorporating these brand new guitar exercises that are going to teach you way faster than everything else you've learned on the internet. So watch this video to discover the best way to master guitar updated in 2025. The first habit you're going to ditch in 2024 is overlooking rhythm. The biggest issue I see in every beginner level guitarist is they just completely disregard rhythm because playing the flashier, bigger lead sounds is just what sounds more fun. And I completely understand. But if you actually want to sound good playing lead, you have to be able to play things at the right time. And rhythm is timing. Timing is king. So here are 3 rhythm exercises you need for 2025 that are going to excel you better than every other guitarist because you use these. First, notice this 16th note grid. If I were to play that out, it'd just sound like this. Which is completely fine, but we need to start placing some intentional accent on those notes, which is going to be done by just playing out a chord while playing the other unaccented notes with those percussive hits. And to do this, we're going to mark which notes we want to accent and which ones we don't want to accent, so we start learning how to have intentional rhythm. So let's say I just accent the main notes to keep it really simple. It's going to start sounding like this. And obviously you should make it more complicated by placing them on the E and the A, because that's going to help you play in between things we like to call the pocket. And when you do this, you're going to have a better rhythm understanding. And so when you're playing with someone like a drummer that emphasizes eighth notes, you're going to be able to play in and out of the pocket and create really, really awesome syncopation. But that's actually not even the best thing you're going to benefit, because you're playing on the 16th note grid and you're using your picking hand almost like a metronome and knowing exactly what you're doing with your left hand. You're going to build a concept called your internal metronome, which is absolutely essential as a guitarist. And this is by far my favorite way to do it and how it's going to expand your playing in 2025. With 16th notes covered, you still have to absolutely understand what to do with 8th notes because it is the way of progression. So by doing this exercise, you're going to absolutely capitalize the gains you're going to make with these 3 awesome rhythm exercises. With your mouth, I want you to vocalize 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, which is just doubles on a metronome. And as you're doing that, just play accent and hang notes over them with your guitar like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And when you do that with intention on what notes you're going to be placing those notes on and how long they're going to hang, it is going to help you understand note lengths at different speeds, and it's going to help connect your voice and your brain to your guitar, which is going to build that internal metronome that I'm talking about. And when you take those strong pair of exercises and apply it to this third rhythm exercise, you are not going to be lacking in the rhythm department by the end of 2025. And this one is going to be taking a drummer's idea and placing it on your guitar. So if we think about just a basic money beat like a 1 and 2 and 3 and, when we just take a basic beat like a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, it just gets really, really simple. It's a really, really simple way to see how rhythm is accented by drums, and then how you can do the same exact concept on guitar. So what you're going to do is go to a website like Songster, where it gives you the drum notation for your favorite songs. And when you see a kick, you play a low note, and then maybe you play an octave up when you play a snare. And if you see toms, you can just kind of do your own little fill. And then your hi-hat is just like your percussive hits. And what you're going to see is your favorite songs, how these kind of bass and higher registers start playing to make the rhythm dynamic feel. And then you're going to understand drummers, so you're going to understand rhythm more. And when you take that understanding of rhythm with your internal metronome and rhythm accuracy from the other 2 exercises, you're going to have that bulletproof rhythm you've dreamed of having. And you can build that up from a very beginner level if you are just starting guitar in 2025. But to get that lead sound many beginners desire to have, because it's just what makes you feel good and sound cool, there's still another concept that you have to use instead of just rhythm, and that is phrasing. If you've ever heard, it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it, that pretty much applies to guitar as well. So if you want something to sound good, you can't just be dull. You have to understand dynamics. And there's another 3 key concepts you need to do to understand these dynamics. The first one is you have to understand what playing lyrically means. Playing lyrically is kind of ditching the shreddy idea that many guitarists use, because in my opinion, it is not what is the most remembered. If you want to go that route, have fun, it can still sound great, especially to other guitarists. But if you want a well-rounded amount of people to like you, and you want to play for other people that aren't musicians, you have to start understanding what lyrical qualities are, because those are the parts of solos people are really going to remember, and they still sound absolutely phenomenal. It's why guitarists like David Gilmour sound so great. And one of the concepts we have to take for playing lyrically is, if we think about voice, what changes note to note? That is going to be the dynamic, articulation, and volume. So of course, changing your bending, vibrato, whatever from note to note is super simple, and even when you're shredding, that is exactly what you're going to do. But playing different volumes like this gives it a much more lyric and lively quality, and the exact same thing goes for your voice. But the other part you have to remember is you can't just play these super jumpy things like that are usually seen in more shreddier things, because if you're trying to play on the fact of people tracking with their voice, that is just too difficult for almost everybody to do. So if you start playing in closer ranges that are closer together like that, it's just going to be a lot more cohesive for someone's voice to latch along to. But you can still make really awesome jumps. It sounds really good. It's just when you're in the middle of a phrase, it is not the best idea to jump, just to keep the cohesiveness together. And the next part of these dynamics that kind of feed into lyrically is understanding what call and response is. When you're talking to a friend and you have a question in mind, but all they give you is an answer, it kind of leads to confusion, because you need a question for an answer to make any sense. So the same thing applies in music. You can make question statements that kind of end in a higher pitch than they start, like this, and then have kind of more of answer, stable statements that usually end in a descending tone, like this. And playing that with the lyrical playing now gives you lyric plus context, and it makes something people can latch onto emotionally and mentally, tracking the pitches. But there's one more thing you have to understand about dynamics in 2025, and that is your fretboard has direction. You can either go down in pitch or up in pitch. And if you want something to develop, following one of those ways is going to be the best thing to do. When you listen to people like John Mayer, you hear this all the time. The general direction of the solo is going to be going up in pitch, which means you could start up here, and as you keep playing, you kind of get yourself over up to here. If you dabble back up a little bit and go back down, it completely makes sense. It's fine. It might work with this question-answer thing, but if you zoom out on a solo, you should generally see that the general direction is up in pitch or down in pitch. And you can really internalize how important this is. If you think about any story, a story only has emotion because it develops. If you pinpoint any part of a story and isolate it, meh. There's none of that development that brings it that nice emotional quality. So by playing with direction like that, you're actually going to be ramping up the emotion and raising the stakes on each and every phrase, which, if you want something that makes people emotionally engaged, mentally engaged, and mentally remembering it, that emotion from directionality is absolutely essential. And by pairing those rhythm techniques with those phrasing strategies, you're going to be a much better guitar player in 2025. And of course, none of that is very useful unless you understand scales like an absolute genius. which actually isn't that hard, especially if you use the YouTube videos I have up for understanding the 7 scale patterns of the major scale, because that's going to help you because it's going to give you the intentionality to play the right notes all the time. And then when you play the wrong notes, you know what you're doing, so you actually sound amazing. Of course, subscribe for more great guitar content.